When 6-year-old Caleb Fisher stood in line at the Iron Valley Motorcycle Club's annual Christmas toy drive in Prescott, Arizona, clutching a donated stuffed reindeer against his chest while social workers shuffled paperwork nearby. He looked up at the massive biker handing out gifts and whispered 4 words that would stop the entire event cold. "After Christmas, I'll be alone again." The way he said it, not with tears or drama, but with the quiet acceptance of a child who'd learned that temporary kindness always ended, made Marcus Steele Garrett, vice president of Iron Valley MC, and a man who'd spent 20 years learning to spot children in crisis, kneel down on that concrete floor and make a promise that would transform one foster kid's understanding of what family could mean. It was December 18th, a Saturday afternoon 2 weeks before Christmas, and the Iron Valley Clubhouse on the edge of Prescott was packed with families. The annual toy drive had been running for 14 years, drawing children from all over Yavapai County. Families who were struggling, kids in the foster system, single parents working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. The club collected donations year-round, partnered with local businesses, and turned their garage-style clubhouse into something that looked more like Santa's workshop than a biker hangout. Strings of colored lights hung from exposed beams, a massive decorated tree stood in one corner, and tables overflowed with wrapped presents sorted by age and gender. Steele was working the distribution table, a role he'd held for the past 8 years. He was 46 years old, built like a tank with graying temples and forearms covered in tattoos that told stories of military service and hard miles. His leather vest bore Iron Valley patches, a road name earned 18 years ago when he'd refused to bend under pressure that would have broken most men, and enough pins and rockers to mark him as a founding member who'd helped build this club from nothing. He'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat medic, seen things that still woke him at 3 a.m., and found his salvation in the brotherhood of men who understood that some scars didn't show. The line of children waiting for presents stretched across the clubhouse, each kid clutching a ticket number, eyes wide with the kind of hope that Christmas brings when you're young enough to still believe in magic. Steele had handed out probably 60 presents already that afternoon, watching parents' faces light up with relief, watching kids hug stuffed animals and action figures like they were made of gold. Then he noticed the boy. The kid was maybe 6 or 7 years old, small for his age, with light brown hair that needed cutting and green eyes that looked too old for his face. He wore jeans that were clean but clearly second-hand, a sweater with a faded snowman on the front, and sneakers that had been white once but were now dingy gray. He stood between 2 women in professional clothes, holding clipboards and wearing ID badges that Steele recognized immediately. Department of Child Safety caseworkers, foster kid. Steele had seen enough of them over the years to know the signs, the practiced politeness, the careful way they held themselves, the wariness in their eyes that came from learning early that adults could disappoint you. When the boy's turn came, Steele smiled and held up a stuffed reindeer with a red nose and a jingle bell collar. "This one's got your name on it, buddy. What do you think?" The boy took the reindeer carefully, like he was afraid it might break or be taken away. His small hands squeezed the soft brown fur, and the faintest smile touched his lips. "Thank you." His voice was so quiet, Steele almost didn't hear him over the noise of the crowded room. "You're welcome." Steele glanced at the caseworkers. "What's your name, son?" "Caleb. Caleb Fisher." "Nice to meet you, Caleb. I'm Steele." The boy looked up at him then, really looked, studying Steele's face with an intensity that was unsettling in someone so young. Then Caleb leaned forward slightly and spoke just loud enough for Steele to hear. "After Christmas, I'll be alone again." The words hit Steele like a punch to the chest. He'd heard sad things from kids before, stories that broke your heart, but there was something about the way Caleb said it that was worse than tears. It was resignation, acceptance, the kind of thing no 6-year-old should ever have to feel. Steele looked at the caseworkers who were talking to each other and hadn't heard. He looked back at Caleb, who was holding that reindeer and waiting for Steele to say something, anything, that might prove him wrong. Steele made a decision in that moment, the kind of decision that came from instinct and experience, and the absolute certainty that this child needed someone to see him. He stood up, walked around the table, and knelt down to Caleb's eye level. "Why do you think you'll be alone?" Caleb's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back. Because Christmas is when people want to help. But then it's over and everybody goes back to their regular lives, and I go back to being just another foster kid nobody really wants. My caseworker said I'm hard to place because I'm not a baby, and I have issues. His voice dropped even quieter. After the holidays, I'll probably go to a group home. Steele felt something crack open in his chest. He'd known loneliness, had felt invisible, had spent years of his childhood believing he didn't matter. And here was a 6-year-old articulating that same pain with a clarity that shouldn't have been possible. One of the caseworkers noticed Steele kneeling and approached. Is everything okay? Steele stood, keeping one hand on Caleb's shoulder. Can I talk to you for a minute? They stepped a few feet away while Caleb clutched his reindeer. Steele kept his voice low, but his tone was firm. What's his situation? The caseworker, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and too many files in her arms, sighed. Caleb's been in the system for 2 years. His mother passed away from an overdose, no father on the birth certificate, no extended family willing or able to take him. He's been through 4 placements. He's a sweet kid, but he has attachment issues and some behavioral challenges related to trauma. We're doing our best, but resources are limited, especially during the holidays. What happens after Christmas? We're trying to find a long-term placement, but realistically, he'll probably go to a group home in Phoenix after the new year. It's not ideal, but it's safe and structured. Steele looked back at Caleb, who was watching them with those 2 old eyes, probably understanding more than any adult wanted him to. How would you feel about Iron Valley MC sponsoring Caleb for the holidays, taking him for activities, making sure he has somewhere to go, someone checking in on him? The caseworker's expression shifted to cautious interest. That's very generous, but we'd need background checks, approval from the department, supervision protocols. We can't just hand a child over to strangers, even well-meaning ones. I get that. Steele pulled out his phone. I'll give you my information right now. Run whatever checks you need. I'm former military, medic, honorable discharge, no criminal record. Iron Valley MC has been running this toy drive for 14 years. We've partnered with DCS before on community programs. We're not strangers. We're a resource. The caseworker studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Let me make some calls. If this checks out and if Caleb's current placement agrees to supervised outings, we might be able to arrange something. But I need to be clear, this is temporary. We can't make promises about long-term placement. Temporary is better than nothing. Steele walked back to Caleb and knelt down again. Hey, buddy, how would you feel about hanging out with me and my brothers from the motorcycle club over the next couple weeks? Maybe come to some Christmas events, help us with some projects, spend some time at the clubhouse. Caleb's eyes went wide. Really? You want me to come back? Not just today for the toy drive, but other days too? Steele smiled. Yeah, other days too. If your caseworkers say it's okay and if you want to, we'd really like to have you around. Caleb hugged the reindeer tighter, and for the first time since Steele had seen him, a real smile broke across his face. I want to. I really want to. Over the next hour, while the toy drive continued around them, Steele made calls. He contacted Hawk, the club president, explained the situation, and got immediate approval. He called other brothers, men he'd ridden with for years, men who understood that Iron Valley MC had been built on the principle of showing up for people who needed them. He coordinated with the caseworkers, provided documentation, agreed to supervision requirements. By the time the event ended and families started filtering out into the cold December evening, Steele had a plan in place. Caleb would spend the next 2 weeks through Christmas and New Year's under Iron Valley's wing. Supervised visits, approved activities, all properly documented and legal. The boy's current foster placement, a temporary emergency home that was overcrowded and understaffed, was relieved to have some of the burden lifted. 3 days later, on December 21st, Steele picked Caleb up from the foster home in his truck. The boy was waiting on the porch with a small backpack, wearing the same snowman sweater and a coat that was too thin for the Arizona winter. Steele noticed Caleb was holding the stuffed reindeer. Brought your friend, huh? Caleb nodded seriously. His name is Jingle. I named him after the bell. That's a good name. Jingle it is. They drove to the Iron Valley clubhouse where 8 other members were waiting. Hawk, the president, a man in his 50s with a gray beard and the calm authority of someone who'd led men through hard times. Wrench, the club's mechanic, and a guy who could fix anything with an engine. Bear, the sergeant-at-arms, massive and intimidating until he smiled. Torch, Ryder, Smokey, Doc, and Axel. Men who'd dropped their Saturday plans because one of their brothers had asked them to show up for a kid who needed family. Caleb walked into the clubhouse and stopped, overwhelmed by the presence of 8 large men in leather vests, all looking at him with varying degrees of gentle curiosity. Steele put a hand on his shoulder. "Caleb, these are my brothers. Brothers, this is Caleb. And for the next 2 weeks, he's Iron Valley." Hawk stepped forward and knelt down. "Welcome to the family, little man. We're glad you're here." What followed over the next 2 weeks would become the story Caleb would carry for the rest of his life. Steele and the Iron Valley brothers didn't just supervise him or keep him occupied. They made him part of their world. They took him to the clubhouse almost daily, where Wrench taught him basic motorcycle maintenance, showing him how to check oil and clean spark plugs on an old Harley they kept for teaching purposes. They brought him to a Christmas lights display where Bear lifted him onto his shoulders so he could see over the crowd. They included him in their annual toy sorting project, where Caleb helped organize donations for other kids, his small hands carefully matching age tags to wrapped presents. Steele noticed things. Caleb was careful around food, eating slowly like he was afraid it might be taken away or like he wasn't sure when the next meal would come. He was hyper-aware of people's moods, watching faces for signs of anger or disappointment. He flinched slightly at loud noises and sudden movements, classic signs of a kid who'd learned the world wasn't safe. But he also noticed Caleb starting to relax. And by the 4th day, the boy laughed at one of Doc's terrible jokes. By the 6th day, he was asking questions instead of waiting to be told what to do. By the 8th day, he ran to Steele's truck when it pulled up instead of waiting politely on the porch. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, Steele picked Caleb up early in the morning. The club was hosting a Christmas dinner at the clubhouse for families who had nowhere else to go, and they'd invited Caleb to spend the entire day with them. When Steele arrived, Caleb was waiting with his backpack and Jingle the reindeer, but there was something different in his expression. Anxiety mixed with hope, like he was bracing for disappointment, but still daring to want something good. Steele noticed and asked gently as they drove, "You okay, buddy? You seem quiet." Caleb was silent for a moment, then spoke in that small voice Steele had come to recognize as the one he used when he was afraid of the answer. "After tomorrow, after Christmas, do I still get to see you? Or does it end like I said it would?" Steele pulled the truck over to the side of the road and turned to face Caleb fully. "Listen to me. This doesn't end tomorrow. We're not doing this because it's Christmas. We're doing this because you're part of our family now. Family doesn't stop caring when the calendar changes. You understand?" Caleb's eyes filled with tears. "But I've heard that before. People say they'll stay and then they don't. My second foster mom said I was part of her family, but then she said I was too much work and sent me back. How do I know you won't do that too?" Steele felt his throat tighten. He understood that fear on a level most people couldn't. "You don't know for sure. I can't make you a promise that erases every time someone let you down. But I can tell you that I'm not going anywhere. Iron Valley MC doesn't quit on people. We show up, we stay, and you're going to keep seeing that until you believe it." Caleb wiped his face with his sleeve. "I want to believe it." Steele reached over and ruffled the boy's hair. "Then let's start there. Come on, we've got a Christmas dinner to help set up." The clubhouse had been transformed. Long tables covered in red tablecloths filled the main room. The decorated tree twinkled in the corner. The kitchen smelled like roasting turkey and fresh bread. Wives and girlfriends of club members, the old ladies as they were affectionately called, were coordinating the meal prep. Children of members ran around playing, and Caleb, this small foster kid who'd expected to be alone, was pulled into the chaos with welcoming arms. Bear's wife, Linda, put him to work setting the table. Hawk's teenage daughter taught him how to fold napkins into fancy shapes. Wrench's son, a boy about Caleb's age, asked him to play with a remote control car. By the time families started arriving for dinner, about 40 people from the community who had nowhere else to go for Christmas, Caleb was laughing and running around like he'd been part of this group his whole life. Dinner was loud and chaotic and warm. Caleb sat between Steele and Wrench, his plate piled high with turkey and mashed potatoes and green beans. Steele watched him eat, noticed the way he kept looking around the table like he was trying to memorize faces, like he was afraid this moment would disappear if he stopped paying attention. After dinner, Hawk stood up and called for attention. The room quieted down, and he spoke in that calm, authoritative way he had. Every year we gather here on Christmas Eve to remind ourselves what this club is really about. It's not about the bikes or the leather or the road. It's about brotherhood. It's about showing up for each other and for people who need us. It's about being the kind of family that doesn't quit when things get hard. He looked directly at Caleb. This year we've been reminded of that in a powerful way. A few weeks ago, a young man told one of our brothers that after Christmas, he'd be alone again. And that was unacceptable to us. So Caleb, I want you to know something. You're not alone. You're Iron Valley now. And that means you've got brothers who will show up for you, who will fight for you, who will be there when you need them. Not just today, not just this week, always. The room erupted in applause, and Caleb's face turned red, but he was smiling, really smiling, in a way Steele hadn't seen before. After the applause died down, Steele leaned over and spoke quietly. You good? Caleb nodded, then looked up at him with those green eyes. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you pick me? Out of all the kids at the toy drive, why did you care about what I said? Steele was quiet for a moment, considering how to answer honestly without overwhelming a 6-year-old with adult pain. Because I used to be a kid who felt alone too. I know what it's like to think nobody sees you, nobody cares. And when I grew up and found this club, I found brothers who saw me and cared. So when you said you'd be alone after Christmas, I saw myself. And I decided right then that you weren't going to feel that way if I could help it. Caleb processed this, then asked another question. What happens after the 2 weeks are up? When the caseworker says you can't take me anymore? Steele had been dreading this question, but he'd also been preparing for it. He'd spent the last week making phone calls, talking to lawyers, meeting with DCS, exploring options. I'm working on that. I can't make promises yet because there's a lot of legal stuff to figure out, but I'm trying to become your foster parent. Officially. If that's something you'd want. Caleb's eyes went wide. You want to be my foster dad? Like for real, not just visiting. For real. I've already started the application process. It takes time and there's training and home inspections and background checks. But yeah, I want to, if you want me to. Caleb threw his arms around Steele's neck and hugged him with the fierce desperation of a child who'd been waiting his whole life for someone to choose him. I want that so much. Steele hugged him back, this small boy who'd walked into his life 2 weeks ago and changed everything, and made a silent promise to do whatever it took to make this permanent. The rest of Christmas Eve passed in a blur of dessert and games and carols, sung off-key by bikers who were better with engines than pitch. When Steele drove Caleb back to the foster home that night, the boy was half asleep in the passenger seat, clutching Jingle and wearing a new Iron Valley sweatshirt that Hawk's wife had brought for him. Before Caleb got out of the truck, he looked at Steele one more time. Tomorrow's Christmas. Will I see you? Steele smiled. I'll pick you up at 10 in the morning. We're doing breakfast at my place, then opening presents, then watching movies. Just you and me. Sound good? Caleb's smile was brighter than the Christmas lights strung across the foster home's porch. That sounds perfect. Christmas Day was everything Steele had hoped it would be. He picked Caleb up and brought him to his small house on the edge of town, a place he'd lived alone for the past 8 years. They made pancakes together, Caleb standing on a stool to help flip them. They opened presents. Steele had gotten him a new winter coat, some books, a model motorcycle kit they could build together, and a leather bracelet with Iron Valley stamped into it. Caleb gave Steele a drawing he'd made, a picture of a motorcycle with 2 people on it, one big and one small, with the words, "My family," written at the top in careful letters. Steele hung that drawing on his refrigerator, and it stayed there for years, a reminder of the day a lonely kid chose to trust him. They spent the afternoon watching Christmas movies and building the motorcycle model. Caleb's small hands working carefully with the tiny pieces, while Steele guided him through the instructions. In the evening, they went back to the clubhouse where other members had gathered for a more casual Christmas gathering. Caleb played with the other kids, ate too much pie, and fell asleep on the clubhouse couch with his head on Steele's lap. The 2 weeks turned into 3, then 4, as Steele navigated the foster care system's requirements. He attended training classes, submitted to home inspections, provided references, went through background checks. The caseworkers were cautiously optimistic, but bureaucracy moved slowly. Caleb continued to stay in his temporary placement, but spent almost every weekend and several weekdays with Steele and the Iron Valley brothers. In mid-January, Steele got the call he'd been waiting for. His foster care application had been approved. He could take Caleb as a placement immediately if the boy agreed. Steele picked Caleb up from school that day, the caseworker present for the conversation. They sat in Steele's truck in the school parking lot, and he explained what the approval meant. "I got the paperwork today. If you want to, you can come live with me, like really live with me, not just visits. You'd have your own room, your own space. You'd be my foster son officially." Caleb didn't hesitate. "When can I move in?" Steele laughed, relief and joy flooding through him. "How about this weekend? We can pack up your stuff and get you settled." Caleb turned to the caseworker. "Is this real? This is really happening?" The caseworker smiled, and Steele noticed she had tears in her eyes. "It's really happening, Caleb. You're going home." That Saturday, Steele and 6 Iron Valley brothers showed up at the foster home with Steele's truck and a trailer. Caleb's belongings fit into 2 boxes and a duffel bag. Everything he owned in the world could be loaded in 10 minutes. But when they arrived at Steele's house, the brothers had transformed the spare bedroom into a kid's room. They'd painted the walls, assembled a new bed, hung up posters, stocked the closet with clothes in Caleb's size, filled shelves with books and toys. Wrench had built a custom desk. Bear's wife had made curtains. Hawk had framed a photo of Caleb with all the Iron Valley brothers and hung it on the wall. Caleb walked into that room and stopped, overwhelmed. "This is all mine?" "All yours, buddy. Welcome home." Over the following months, Caleb settled into life with Steele. There were hard moments, nights when Caleb woke up crying from nightmares about his mother, days when his trauma responses kicked in and he tested boundaries, waiting for Steele to give up on him like others had. Times when the grief and fear he'd been carrying for years came spilling out in anger or tears or withdrawal, but Steele showed up for all of it. He held Caleb when he cried. He stayed calm when the boy lashed out. He set boundaries with kindness. He proved, day after day after day, that he wasn't going anywhere. Caleb started therapy, working with a counselor who specialized in childhood trauma. He started doing better in school. He made friends. He learned to ride on the back of Steele's motorcycle, his small arms wrapped around his foster dad's waist, laughing as they cruised through the Arizona mountains. He became a fixture at Iron Valley events, the club's unofficial mascot, a kid who'd been alone and was now surrounded by a brotherhood of men who'd claimed him as family. 1 year after that Christmas toy drive, Steele sat Caleb down for a serious conversation. "I want to adopt you. Not just foster care, but full adoption. You'd be my son legally, permanently. No more caseworkers, no more uncertainty. Just you and me, family for real. What do you think?" Caleb, now 7.5, looked at Steele with those green eyes that weren't quite as old as they used to be. "Does that mean I can call you Dad?" Steele's voice was rough with emotion. "That means you can call me Dad." Caleb smiled. "Then yes, I want that. I want you to be my dad." The adoption was finalized 6 months later. Caleb Fisher became Caleb Garrett. Steele became Dad. And on the day the judge signed the papers, making it official, the entire Iron Valley MC was there in the courtroom, 15 bikers in leather who stood as witnesses to a family being made. That night, they celebrated at the clubhouse with cake and sparkling cider and toasts given by brothers who'd watched a scared foster kid transform into a confident boy who knew he was loved. Years later, when Caleb was 16, he stood in front of his high school class and gave a speech about family. He talked about losing his mother, about the foster system, about feeling invisible and disposable. He talked about a toy drive at a motorcycle club where he'd whispered to a stranger that he'd be alone after Christmas. And he talked about what happened next, about a biker who knelt down and made a promise, about a brotherhood that showed up and stayed, about a man who fought through red tape and bureaucracy and his own fears to become a father, about learning that family wasn't just blood, it was choice and commitment and showing up even when it was hard. He ended the speech with words that had become his personal philosophy. My dad taught me that being alone is a circumstance, not a destiny, that there are people in this world who will see you when you feel invisible, that asking for help is brave, not weak, and that family is built by people who choose to stay. I was a 6-year-old who thought I'd be alone forever, but I'm 16 now and I've never been alone since the day I met my dad and Iron Valley MC. Because that's what real family does. They don't leave when the holidays are over. They stay for every day after. Steele was in the audience that day, sitting beside Hawk and Wrench and Bear, and when Caleb finished speaking, he had to wipe his eyes. Later, when they were driving home, Caleb said something that Steele would remember forever. You know what the best part is? What's that? I used to think that Christmas was when people pretended to care, and then everything went back to normal after. But you taught me that Christmas isn't about a day. It's about the promise to show up for people you love. And you've shown up for me every single day since. That's the real gift. Steele reached over and squeezed his son's shoulder. You showed up too, kid. You were brave enough to trust me when you had every reason not to. You did the hard work of healing. You chose to let me in. That took more courage than anything I did. The story of Caleb and Steele became part of Iron Valley MC's legacy. It was a reminder of why they did toy drives and community outreach. It was proof that brotherhood extended beyond blood, that family could be built from nothing, that one moment of choosing to see a hurting child could change 2 lives forever. The club started a program in Caleb's honor, partnering with DCS to provide mentorship and support for foster kids year-round, not just at Christmas. They called it the Iron Valley Family Initiative. Over the next decade, 12 more children found permanent homes through connections made at club events. Dozens more found temporary support and mentoring that helped them through hard times. If you have ever felt invisible, if you have ever been the person who needed someone to see you and choose you, then this story is a reminder that there are people watching, people willing to show up, people ready to transform a whispered fear into a promise kept. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that loneliness is not permanent, that family can be found in unexpected places, and that sometimes the most important words you can say to a hurting child are simple. You are not alone. I am staying. You matter. Tell us in the comments if you have ever been chosen by someone when you needed it most, or if you have been the one who showed up for someone else. Your story matters because every person willing to see a child in crisis, to believe them when they speak their fear, and to fight for them when the world has given up becomes proof that transformation is possible, that families can be built from broken pieces, that one moment of courage, whether it is a 6-year-old whispering the truth or a biker kneeling down to listen, can echo forward into a lifetime of belonging, healing, and the unshakable knowledge that someone chose you and meant it.